Ah, yes, sports, the ultimate showcase of athletic prowess, sportsman spirit, and adrenaline in my soul. So I wanted to get a piece of that exhilaration that only sports can bring about. So I did what any normal person would do. I binge watched a whole bunch of sports anime. Go outside, what's that supposed to be? So yeah, basically I've been watching sports anime, quite a lot of it. My recent watches include shows like Awashi, Megalobox, Tsurune, Bluelock, and Kuroko's Basketball. Of course, I wasn't a stranger to this genre prior to this. I had already finished watching shows like Haikyuu, Run with the Wind, Stars Align, Birdie Wing, and Slow Loop because fishing is a sport apparently, and a few more. Sports is a vast genre within this medium. However, when we talk about sports anime, the first show that comes to mind is Haikyuu. Haikyuu is probably the most popular sports anime out there, and it's the perfect one. Haikyuu was the first sports anime that I watched, and that was probably a mistake because every show I watched from that point on couldn't live up to it. And I know what you're thinking. Boo, watch your 10th anime, you normie, but as I previously mentioned, I have. I hate making declarative statements like this, declaring a show to be the best the genre has to offer despite barely scratching the surface of said genre doesn't sit right with me, but when it comes to sports anime, I can make this statement. Allow me to elaborate. There are certain elements that can make or break a sports anime, and Haikyuu is pretty much the only show which handles all of these elements really well. Let's go through them. The protagonist. Going by the textbook definition, a protagonist is the character the story revolves around. Regardless of the genre, a good protagonist makes a show, and to be honest, most sports anime by and large have likable and compelling protagonists. Hinata, for example, he's not the most complex character in the world, but he doesn't need to be. It's volleyball, not Attack on Titan. When it comes to these sports anime protagonists, there are some common tropes. Generally, the protagonist tends to have weak fundamentals and or a particular disadvantage, as well as a special ability. Hinata's jumping, Kuroko's lack of presence, Ashito's spatial awareness, you get the idea. Of course, that's not always the case. Some characters are just really good at their sport, but this trend of special abilities is very common, and there's nothing wrong with it. But again, Haikyuu handles this aspect perfectly, better than any other show. The main reason for that is because Hinata's abilities are believable. An impressive jump isn't unheard of. I can believe that. I can't believe Kuroko literally disappearing mid-game despite having the brightest hair color amongst his team. Actually, he doesn't disappear, he just misdirects his opponent's eyes. Yeah, no, not buying that. And even if that's the explanation, how does the entire crowd lose sight of him? Every member of the audience is looking at him through a different angle. That's not how vision works. Ashito's spatial awareness isn't unheard of, but the magnitude of the same is hard to sit through, and the visual presentation is even worse. If the visuals are to be believed, he wargs into a crow. He's literally Bran from Game of Thrones. A lot of sports anime leans way too heavily on these gimmicks. Haikyuu doesn't. Sure, there's a stray crow here and there, but they don't interact with the actual match. Hinata is believable. There's another aspect to this. The main character's contribution to the actual sport. Bluelock is particularly bad at this. Watching the protagonist stand around and do nothing isn't fun. The protagonist stands around, observes the match, explains everything to no one in particular, and fails when he does try to do something. Up until that one moment every 10 episodes where he does succeed. Why? Like, I get it, the other team members need to be involved with the match, but not more than the protagonist. That defeats the purpose. If the author wants the audience to root for the main character needs to do something. Haikyuu, as always, handles this aspect incredibly well. Hinata has so many standout moments, and at the same time the rest of Karasuno also get their moments. Hinata is believable and he is a protagonist you can root for. Is he the best character as far as sports anime is concerned? Probably not. But is he the best protagonist of a sports anime? Yes, he is. Another important element of sports anime is the sport itself. I have played football before, and no, it's not soccer, shut up. But I feel like Bluelock doesn't do a good enough job of explaining the actual working of the sport. Aoashi, on the other hand, kinda overdoes it. And as you'd expect, Haikyuu is the perfect middle ground. Again, I'm not talking about the explanation of the rules, I'm talking about the way the rules and the working of the sport is integrated into the show itself. And of course, some explanation is appreciated. I have never held a volleyball in my life, but some episodes into Haikyuu, I had a decent understanding of the rules. I've finished watching Kuroko's Basketball and I still don't know what an alley-oop is. Also, I feel like these shows take a lot of liberty with the sport. I've never played basketball before, but some of the stuff they did seemed fairly impossible to me. There were moments when a character was in the zone and the players around him instantly knew, despite the fact that the player wasn't doing anything. He was standing still. Can the other player see the light coming out of his eyes? Haikyuu, however, handles the presentation really well. A strong serve, an accurate set, a fast spike, these are all believable occurrences. Of course, there are shows which have an immunity to this problem. Megalobox, for example. While boxing is real, involving giant Terminator machines pretty much makes megaloboxing a made-up sport, meaning the show decides the presentation. Unfortunately, most shows are about real sports and feature normal characters who don't have any superpowers. This makes realism important. Haikyuu explains volleyball without breaking into extended expositions. It presents the sport perfectly and it's realistic, which leads to some compelling conflicts. The next element is the cast. And this isn't exactly Haikyuu's strong suit either. The Haikyuu cast is simply too large. Of course, the Karasuno people are generally likable, but the series expects me to care about multiple teams and their members, and well, I don't. I believe Run with the Wind features the perfect cast. Each member has a compelling arc and each member gets their moment to shine without taking the spotlight away from the protagonist. So yes, this is that one element where Haikyuu isn't the gold standard. I pretty much explained what an ideal cast of a sports anime should look like. The characters should be interesting and or compelling. They should get their moment to shine, but they shouldn't shine as bright as the protagonist. Oh, and they should have interesting dynamics with each other. I think I just described an ideal cast regardless of the genre or the medium. Another element is the drama, which is important because non-stop athletics is boring. Drama is an important aspect and some shows can get away with it better than others. Megalobox, for example, the drama in that show is justified because of the setting. However, most of these sports anime feature normal high school kids. And with a setting like that, the room for drama is limited. And most shows do way too much. I won't spoil you, but a certain character conflict that occurred near the end of Kuroko's Basketball Season 3 was ridiculously goofy. Even Tsurune is a bit too heavy-handed with the drama. The perfect way of handling drama in a sports anime is to keep it sports-related, or at least high school-related. Of course, there are shows which can get away with more complex stuff. Stars Align did a decent job at handling more mature themes. A decent job, not a great one. Well, surprise surprise, Haikyuu handles its drama very well. Not that there's a lot of it to begin with. Hinata's conflict, mostly about his height amongst other things, is understandable. There's no need to overdo it with the drama aspect, and Haikyuu knows that, which only makes the character conflicts more compelling. Funny how that works. The pacing is a crucial aspect. I'll talk more about the pacing around the actual matches as opposed to the stuff around it. The more important and competitive a match is, the more time it gets. And that can be a slippery slope. A lot of bluelock matches feel unbearably long, even in its manga form. Some of the matches in the second half of Kuroko's Basketball feel really slow as well. Haikyuu, on the other hand, excels at pacing. The show is ridiculously good at structuring matches. The entire third season of this show is a single match, and yet I wasn't bored. Everything kept building up, the plays were difficult to predict, the flow of the match was phenomenal. This is how you structure a match. It never felt like the show was hiding the score to serve the narrative and heighten the drama. Something Kuroko's Basketball does a lot. And I know I'm bashing Kuroko's Basketball quite often in this video. It's the most recent sports anime that I watched, so it's still fresh in my mind. Also, during all of the high-profile matches, I could predict the next play. I knew those guys with the colored hair would pull out some new trick, and the current momentum in our favor wouldn't last. That's not a good thing. A lot of shows actually feature several episode-long matches which don't include the main character's team. Even Haikyuu is somewhat guilty of this. Why? I'll never understand. But as a whole, Haikyuu is really well paced. Of course, there are a few boring moments here and there, but it's a 4-season long show. Some dull moments are understandable. The final element that a good sports anime should excel at is the all-around production, which includes animation quality as well as the choreography. And Haikyuu is easily the best at it. Haikyuu utilized detailed, lifelike animation as opposed to the over-the-top style that other shows have. The animators working on this show have a ridiculously good understanding of the human anatomy. The show also had a strong production with several standout cuts of animation and art style changes. Even the 4th season, which was relatively weaker in terms of visuals, pulled out a lot of great looking cuts. Many shows struggle with this. Megalobox had a compelling narrative, but it could rarely produce a well-choreographed match. Bluelock had a lot of rough moments in its production, and even Kuroko's Basketball had a lot of limited scenes. Haikyuu was blessed with an amazing production for most of its runtime. And that's why I believe Haikyuu is the perfect sports anime. Now, does that mean every other sports anime is bad? Absolutely not. Does that mean shows that don't follow a similar style of presentation as Haikyuu is bad? No, it doesn't. The over-the-top presentation that some shows have is a lot of fun in its own way. The shows that focus more on drama and less on the sport can be really compelling as well. It's just that, in my opinion, Haikyuu is the best show that this genre has to offer. It's a rare example of the most popular show being the best one. I'm worried about the final 2 movies for this series. There's over 100 chapters left to adapt, and the team intends to do so with a couple of movies. And yes, that means they'll adapt approximately 1 chapter every 2 minutes. I have read the entire manga and trust me, it's incredible. I genuinely hope that the team knows what they're doing. That's about it. The spring season has started. Check out my watchlist for the same by clicking the video on screen. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and until next time.